respected. There is a silence so powerful, so sacred, that the moment you learn to live inside of it, your entire life will change forever. Let me tell you something that took me years, and I mean years, to truly understand. Not just read about it, not just hear somebody say it, but to feel it in my bones, to live it in my losses, and to finally see it working in my victories. I grew up believing that the more people you told about your dreams, the more real those dreams became. I thought that sharing your goals was the same thing as working toward them. I thought that if enough people knew what you were trying to do, somehow the universe would conspire to make it happen. And let me tell you, I was wrong. I was dead wrong. And that mistake cost me more than I can put into words. See, when you are young, when you are hungry, when you have this fire burning inside of you that nobody else can see yet, the first thing you want to do is tell somebody. You want to run to your best friend. You want to call your family, you want to post it online and tell the whole world, this is what I'm going, this is who I'm going to become. And that feeling, that urge, that desire to share your dream, it feels so natural, so innocent, so right, but it is one of the most dangerous things you will ever do. Now, I want you to stay with me here, because this is not a message about hiding from the wall. This is not a message about being secretive or paranoid or keeping people at arm's length. This is a message about something far deeper, far more sacred. This is a message about protecting the seed before it becomes a tree. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you plant a seed in the ground, a tiny little seed. It's got the potential to become something enormous, a great big tree that gives shade to thousands of people, that bears fruit for generations. But the moment that seed goes into the ground, it is at its most vulnerable. It needs darkness. It needs silence. It needs time. It needs to develop roots before it ever sees light. Now imagine if every single day you dug that seed back up to show everybody how it was growing. Look at my seed. Can you believe what this is going to become? Every time you dig it up, you interrupt the process. You expose it to the elements. You give doubt and negativity access to something that wasn't ready to be seen yet. And eventually that seed dies, not because it wasn't powerful, not because it wasn't meant to grow, but because it never got the quiet, the darkness, the sacred space it needed to become what it was always supposed to be. That seed, that is your dream. That is your plan. That is the vision God placed inside of you. Now I want to tell you about a period in my life that most people don't know about. A chapter I don't open up often, but I'm going to open it today because somebody watching this needs to hear it. There was a time in my life when I was sleeping in my car. A 1976 Ford Maverick, to be specific. I didn't have a home. I didn't have a steady income. I was trying to become a comedian, and the whole world thought I had lost my mind. And I mean the whole world, my family, my friends, the people in my neighborhood, everybody. They looked at me with that particular kind of pity that is worse than anger. That pity that says, we love you, but we don't believe you. And I made the mistake early on of telling everybody what I was going to do. I told them I was going to be on television. I told them I was going to make millions of people laugh. I told them I was going to change my life completely and become something that nobody in my family had ever been before. And you know what happened? Those words, my own beautiful, powerful words, became weapons in other people's hands. Not because they were evil people, not because they didn't love me, but because a dream that hasn't grown yet cannot survive in the wrong environment. When I would have a bad night on stage, and I had plenty of bad nights, let me tell you, I would come home and I would hear it. I thought you were going to be on TV. I thought you were going to make it big. And each one of those words was like someone taking a shovel and digging up that seed I was trying to grow. Each one of those comments, even the one said with a smile, was pulling me back from the edge of the greatness I was trying to reach. And here is what I learned, what I want you to. Burn into your spirit today. Not everyone who loves you can handle your dream. Read that again. Not everyone who loves you can handle your dream. Some people love you with everything they have, and they still cannot hold the weight of what God has placed inside of you because your dream is too big for their current capacity. And that is not their fault, but it is your responsibility to understand it. See, there is something that happens in the human brain, and they've actually studied this. Scientists have looked at this. When you tell someone about a goal you have, your brain gets a small release of the same chemicals it would get if you had actually achieved the goal. You get a little taste of that satisfaction, that completion, that reward. And what that does is it actually reduces your motivation to go out and do the hard work. You've already gotten some of the feeling of success just by talking about it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between announcing the win, actually winning. And so it starts to relax. It starts to coast. It starts to believe that talking was doing. I have met so many people in my life, talented, gifted, anointed people who talk themselves right out of their destiny. They announce so many goals. They declare so many plans. They put so much energy into telling people what they were going to do that they never had any energy left to actually do it. There's a proverb, and it goes back thousands of years, that says, do not tell everyone your business, for not everyone wishes you well. Now some people hear that and they think it's about enemies. They think it's about haters. But I want to tell you something. This is not primarily about your enemies. Your enemies are obvious. You already know who they are. The real danger is not your enemy. The real danger is the well-meaning person who doesn't have the faith to believe in what hasn't happened yet. Think about the people in your life right now. Think about the ones you would tell first if something amazing happened to you. Think about the ones you would call if you had a breakthrough, if you got an opportunity, if you finally took a step toward that thing you've been dreaming about. Now ask yourself honestly, truthfully, ask yourself, can those people hold your dream? Have they demonstrated the capacity to believe in something they cannot see yet? Have they shown you through their own lives and their own choices that they understand the price of a vision? Because if the answer is no, and I say this with all the love I have, then you are not protecting your dream. You are giving your dream to people who cannot carry it. And here is what happens when a fragile newborn dream gets put into the wrong hands. It doesn't just get damaged. It gets infected with doubt. It gets colored by someone else's fear. It gets weighed down by someone else's limited imagination. And slowly, quietly, that dream that once burned like a fire inside of you starts to flicker, and then it dims. And then one day, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, you realize you stopped believing in it completely. Not because the dream was wrong, not because you weren't capable, but because you gave it away too soon to people who didn't have the tools to guard it. I want to tell you about a young woman. I won't use her real name. I'll call her Diane. Diane came from a small town. She had a dream of becoming an architect. She had been drawing buildings since she was 7 years old. She had a gift that her teachers recognized, that even strangers who saw her sketches recognized. She was the kind of person who was so clearly meant for something specific that it almost radiated off her. When she was 18, she sat down with her family at the dinner table and she told them all about her plan. She wanted to go to a particular architecture school. She wanted to study in a city far from home. She had already done the research. She knew the application process. She had a whole vision mapped out. And around that table, with love in their hearts and fear in their eyes, her family systematically dismantled every single part of that dream. Not out of cruelty, out of love, out of the kind of love that is wrapped in practicality and anchored in their own experience of a world where dreams don't come true for people like them. It's too far. It's too expensive. What if you don't get in? What if you don't find work? Why don't you stay here? Stay safe. Stay close. And Diane, who had been so certain at 7 years old, who had been so on fire at 17, walked away from that dinner table a little less sure. And then a little less the next day. And then a little less the week after that. Until eventually she enrolled in a local community college, took a general business degree, and spent the next 15 years working a job that paid her bills but starved her soul. She didn't fail because she wasn't talented. She didn't fail because the dream was impossible. She failed because she presented her seed before it had roots, and the frost of someone else's doubt killed it before it ever had a chance. Now, I am not telling you that story to make you angry at your family. I am not telling you that story to make you distrust the people who love you. I am telling you that story because somewhere in the world right now, Diane is watching this video. Maybe she's in her 30s, maybe she's in her 40s. Maybe she's sitting in an office. That was never meant to be hers, doing work that was never meant to be her purpose. And she needs to know it is not too late. The dream is still there. The seed didn't die completely. It just went dormant. And dormant is not dead. But this time, Diane, when you decide to try again, you do not announce it. You do not sit around that same table and wait for permission. You go quietly. You go deliberately. You go with intention and with faith, and you let the work speak before the words do. You let the results show up before the explanation. You let the tree grow tall enough that when people finally see it, there is nothing left to doubt, nothing left to question, nothing left to tear down. Because here is the truth that most motivational speakers won't tell you. The world does not reward announcements. The world rewards arrivals. Nobody cares what you said you were going to do. They care what you did. Nobody celebrates the plan. They celebrate the achievement. Nobody gives you credit for the vision. They give you credit for the execution. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you will stop wasting your precious energy on proclamations and start investing every single ounce of yourself into the process. There is a particular kind of joy, and I want you to know this joy. I want you to experience this joy. There is a particular kind of joy that comes from walking in secret, from getting up before the world wakes up and putting in hours that nobody sees, from going to bed later than everyone else and knowing that while the world was sleeping, you were building, from carrying something sacred and private in your chest, something that belongs to you and to God and to nobody else, and feeling it grow every single day. That joy is incomparable. That joy does not depend on anyone else's reaction. It doesn't rise and fall based on whether your friend responded enthusiastically or whether your family rolled their eyes. That joy is pure. That joy is yours. And it is the fuel that will carry you all the way to the other side of your transformation. I want you to think about the most successful people you admire. I want you to go back and look at the stories of people who genuinely changed their lives, who went from nothing to something extraordinary. And I want you to notice one thing they almost all have in common. There was a season, usually a long season, where nobody knew what they were doing, where they were working in obscurity, where they were building in silence, where they were showing up every day for a dream that the outside world couldn't see yet. And then only then did they emerge. And when they emerged, they didn't come with an announcement. They came with a result. They came with evidence. They came with something so undeniable that even the doubters had nothing left to say. That is the power of silence. That is the power of keeping your plans close to your chest. That is the power of letting your actions narrate your story instead of your words. And I know some of you are watching this right now and you're thinking, but Steve, what about accountability? What about having people in your corner? What about the importance of community and support? And I hear you. I hear that question, and it is a valid one. But here is the distinction I need you to make. There is a profound difference between a confidant and an audience. A confidant is one person, maybe two, who have proven through time and through their own faith that they can carry the weight of your vision without contaminating it with their fear. An audience is everyone else. And the mistake most people make is that they treat their audience like their confidants. They pour their sacred dreams out to people who were never meant to hold them. You do not need the whole world in your corner before you begin. You need God in your corner. You need your own belief in your corner. And maybe one or two people who have demonstrated through the living of their own lives that they understand what it means to bet on something that doesn't exist yet. That is enough. That has always been enough. That is more than enough. Let me ask you something. And I want you to sit with this question for a moment before you rush past it. When was the last time you did something significant, something meaningful, something that was genuinely important to you, and you didn't tell a single soul about it until it was already done? Think about that. When was the last time you worked towards something in complete silence and let the result do all the talking? For most people, that answer is either a very long time ago or never. And that right there, that inability to move in silence is one of the primary reasons why so many people stay stuck. Not lack of talent, not lack of opportunity, not even lack of resources, but the addiction, and I want you to hear me call it what it is, the addiction to external. Validation before internal transformation has even begun. We live in a world that has made this addiction worse than it has ever been in human history. Think about what we have now that no generation before us has ever had to wrestle with. We have a device in our pocket that gives us the ability at any hour of the day or night to broadcast our intentions to hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes millions of people instantaneously. And with that broadcast comes likes and comments, reactions and shares, and every single one of those little digital responses triggers something in your brain that feels like love, feels like acceptance, feels like proof that you matter. And so we have become a generation of announcers, a generation of people who are far more comfortable declaring what they are going to do than actually doing it. A generation that has confused visibility with progress. A generation that mistakes the performance of ambition for the practice of it. I want to be very clear with you right now because I love you too much to be gentle about this. Posting about your goals is not pursuing your goals. Telling people about your plans is not executing your plans. Creating a vision board and photographing it for the internet is not the same as doing the daily, unglamorous, exhausting, beautiful work of becoming who you were created to be. Now, I know that's going to sting for some people. I know there are people watching this right now who have built an entire identity around being someone who is about to do something incredible, someone who is always on the verge of the breakthrough, someone who is perpetually in the process of beginning. And I am not here to shame you. I am here to shake you. Because the world needs what is inside of you, not the version of it that you perform for other people. The real thing, the actual live, built, created, achieved thing. Let me tell you about something I call the energy equation. Every single human being wakes up every day with a finite amount of energy. Physical energy, yes, but also emotional energy, creative energy, mental energy, spiritual energy. And everything you do with your day, every conversation you have, every thought you entertain, every interaction you engage in draws from that finite pool. Now, here is what most people don't realize. Every time you talk about your dream, every time you explain your plan, every time you defend your vision to someone who doesn't understand it, you are spending from that pool. You are making a withdrawal. And if you are spending your energy talking about the work instead of doing the work, then by the time you sit down to actually build something, your account is low. Sometimes it's empty. The most productive people in the world are not the ones who talk the most about what they are doing. They are the ones who have learned to guard their energy like it is the most precious resource they have, because it is. They have learned to say less, to share less, to explain less, and to do more, to build more, to create more, to become more. I think about the eagle. You know, I've spoken about the eagle many times in my life because there is something about that bird that captures the essence of everything I believe about greatness. The eagle does not flock. If you ever see a group of eagles, you call them a convocation, and it's rare. Eagles are largely solitary creatures. They fly at altitudes that other birds cannot reach. When an eagle is preparing to do something significant, when it is preparing to dive, when it is preparing to hunt, when it is preparing to make its move, it does not call a meeting. It does not consult the sparrows. It does not ask the pigeons for their opinion. It gathers itself, it fixes its eyes, and it moves with a precision and a power that is the direct result of all that quiet, all that altitude, all that solitary preparation. You were built to fly at eagle altitude, but you cannot get there if you are always on the ground explaining yourself to birds that were never meant to fly that high. And here is something I need you to understand about the people in your life who question your dreams, and I want you to hear this with compassion, not with anger most of the time. When someone tries to talk you out of your dream, they are not talking about your dream at all. They are talking about their own. They are telling you the story of the thing they wanted once, the thing they gave up, the thing they decided was impossible. They are handing you the weight of their own abandoned vision and dressing it up as wisdom. They are saying, be careful, when what they really mean is, I was afraid. They are saying, be realistic, when what they really mean is, I gave up. They are saying, that's not how the world works, when what they really mean is, that's not how the world worked for me. And none of that is your truth. None of that has to be your story. I remember when I first started getting traction in my career, when things started to slowly, painfully, beautifully begin to turn around, and I made another mistake that I want to save you from making. I started talking again. I got a little bit of momentum and I could not help myself. I started telling people about what was coming, about the opportunities that were beginning to open up, about the doors that were starting to crack. And every time I opened my mouth to announce something that hadn't happened yet, I felt the energy shift. I felt the weight of other people's skepticism enter the room. I felt that doubt begin to compete with my faith. And I had to learn, sometimes the hard way, sometimes painfully, that a door that is cracking open is not the same as a door that is wide open. And you should not be standing in a cracking doorway giving a press conference. Wait until you're through the door. Then you can talk. There is something ancient and deeply spiritual about this principle. And I want to spend some time here because I think it is the part of this conversation that most people rush past. Almost every major spiritual tradition in the world, and I mean across cultures, across centuries, across completely different ways of understanding the divine, almost every one of them has something to say about the sacred nature of silence, of waiting, of incubating the thing before you release it into the world. In the book of Genesis, before God speaks creation into existence, there is a period described as darkness over the deep, a void. A silence. Before anything exists, before anything is declared or proclaimed or brought into being, there is this profound, pregnant silence. And it is out of that silence that everything comes. Creation itself begins not with noise, but with the sacred stillness that precedes the word. And I think there is something in that for all of us. The greatest things that will ever come from your life will not begin with an announcement. They will begin with the silence. They will begin in the darkness of your early mornings when nobody is watching. They will begin in the void of your uncertainty when you are not yet sure that it's going to work. They will begin in that sacred, terrifying, beautiful space between who you are and who you are becoming, a space that is far too holy to be crowded with other people's opinions. You have to learn to be comfortable in that space. You have to learn to sit in the not yet without panicking and reaching for someone else's validation to calm you down. Because that panic, that desperate need to tell someone, to show someone, to prove to someone that your dream is real, that panic is actually a test. It is the universe asking you, do you believe in this enough to protect it? Do you trust this enough to carry it alone for a season? Do you love this vision enough to guard it in the dark until it is strong enough to stand in the light? And if you can pass that test, if you can learn to sit in the silence and keep working, I promise you, I have seen this enough times to promise you what comes out on the other side will be something that even you, even with all of your imagination and all of your faith, could not have fully anticipated. Now, let me talk to you about something that I think is particularly painful and particularly important, and that is the phenomenon of what I call dream thieves. Not enemies, not strangers. Dream thieves are often the people who are the closest to you. They are the ones sitting at your dinner table. They are the ones who have known you since you were a child. They are the ones who love you genuinely and who, in the name of that love, will steal your dream so quietly and so gently that you won't even realize it's gone until years later. Dream thieves operate through a very specific set of tools. They use the tool of comparison. Well, your cousin tried something like that and it didn't work out. They use the tool of statistics. You know how many people try to do what you're talking about and fail? They use the tool of timing. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe you should wait until things are more stable. They use the tool of practicality. I'm just being realistic. I just want what's best for you. They use the tool of love itself, and this is the most dangerous one. They wrap their doubt in so much genuine affection that it is almost impossible to reject it without feeling like you are rejecting them. So we swallow it. We let the doubt come in because it came from someone we love. We let the fear take root because it was planted by a hand we trust. And then we wonder why the dream doesn't grow the way it should. We wonder why the fire keeps going out. We wonder why we keep starting and stopping, as if there is some invisible ceiling that we cannot quite seem to break through. The ceiling is not invisible. You can see it clearly if you look. It is made of borrowed fear, secondhand doubt, other people's abandoned dreams stacked on top of your own. And the only way to break through it is to stop adding to it. Stop bringing other people's opinions into the sacred space of your becoming. Stop presenting your unfinished work to people who have already decided what is and is not possible. I want to tell you about the power of a made-up mind. Because there is a point, and if you've ever been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There is a point in a person's journey where something shifts, where the dream stops being a wish and starts being a decision, where the vision stops being a fantasy and starts being a direction, where you stop asking what if and start asking how. And when you reach that point, when you arrive at that place of total internal commitment, everything changes. The actions change, the habits change, the way you spend your time changes, the way you think about your resources changes, the way you respond to setbacks changes, everything. But here is what I have observed, what I have lived, what I know to be true. That point of total internal commitment is fragile in its early stages. It is a fire that is just learning to burn. And like any young fire, it can be extinguished by the wrong wind at the wrong moment. And the wrong wind is almost always someone else's words spoken into the space of your new beginning. Guard the fire, tend it in private, feed it in secret. Let it grow until it is a blaze that no wind in the world can touch, and then only then step out into the open and let the warmth of it reach everyone around you. But don't bring the wind in while the fire is still learning to breathe. Let me bring this part to a close with something that I want you to carry with you, not just today, not just this week, but for the rest of your life. The greatest gift you can give your dream is your silence. The greatest act of faith you can demonstrate is working towards something without needing anyone else to confirm that it is worth working toward. The greatest form of self-respect is believing in your own vision enough to protect it from the world until it is ready to meet the world. You do not need permission. You do not need applause. You do not need a cheering section before you take the first step. You need conviction. You need consistency. You need the willingness to show up day after day in the quiet and the dark and the unknown, doing the work, protecting the dream, tending the fire until the morning comes. And it will come. It always comes. But you have to be willing to endure the night.